Virgo, you are thorough. When you commit to something, a way of living, a relationship, a way of thinking about yourself, you do not let go casually. You analyze it from every angle. You look for ways to improve it. You give it every possible chance. You are not someone who abandons things at the first sign of difficulty or discomfort. Your nature does not allow for that kind of impulsive releasing. When you commit deeply, and you stay committed through difficulties that would send someone else looking for the exit. This is one of your greatest strengths. It is also, at certain specific moments in your life, the thing that keeps you standing in a space that no longer fits, not because you are weak or unaware, but because your loyalty and your thorough nature make you almost constitutionally reluctant to step away from something you once chose. But there is something in your life right now that no amount of analysis or adjustment can fix, because the issue is not that it needs fixing. The issue is not that there is something wrong with you for being here, or that you should have left sooner, or that you made a mistake by staying as long as you have. The issue is something far simpler and far more quietly powerful than any of that. The issue is that you have simply grown beyond it. You have become more than this situation, relationship, pattern, or way of living can hold. You have expanded past the edges of something that once fit you well. And now, no matter how skillfully you manage it or how thoroughly you analyze it, the fit is gone. And the 10 signs below show that this outgrowing is not something that is about to begin. It is already well underway. It has been happening quietly, in the faithful Virgo way, gradually, without drama, with patience and care. But it is happening. And recognizing it clearly is the first step towards stepping into what is waiting for you on the other side. Sign 1. The mental energy you once invested in something willingly now feels like a drain. There was a time when the mental energy you gave to this, whatever the specific thing is in your life, did not feel like a cost. Felt like engagement. Felt like interest. Your mind returned to it not because it had to, but because it genuinely wanted to, because there was something alive there that your analytical intelligence found genuinely stimulating, genuinely worthwhile, genuinely deserving of your extraordinary attention. You remember what that felt like, even if the memory has become somewhat distant. The willingness, the quality of showing up in your mind without friction, without the subtle internal resistance that now precedes most of your engagement with this thing. That internal resistance is significant. Your mind is not lazy. It is capable of sustained, deep, meticulous engagement with the things that matter to it. When your mind begins to experience a specific thing as a drain rather than a genuine engagement, it is not because you have become less capable or less committed. It is because your mind has moved on in the way that minds inevitably do when they are growing, and the thing that once stimulated it is no longer doing what a genuinely stimulating thing does. The drain you feel when you turn your attention to this is not depression, and it is not burnout in the ordinary sense. It is more specific and more informative than either of those. It is the feeling of a capable, hungry mind being asked to re-engage with something it has already thoroughly processed, thoroughly understood, and quietly completed. Your mind does not need more from this. It needs something new, something that will meet the level of intelligence and depth that you have developed through all the growth of your recent years. The drain is not a symptom of a problem with you. It is a signal about where you are in relation to this thing. And the signal is clear. You have outgrown the level of engagement it offers, and your mind knows it, even when the rest of you is still catching up. Sign 2. A situation, relationship, or routine that you once found genuinely stimulating has become predictable in a way that leaves you flat. Predictability is a complicated thing for Virgo. You appreciate order. You value knowing what to expect. You have never been the kind of person who seeks chaos or unpredictability for its own sake, and you find genuine comfort in routines that are well designed and functioning smoothly. This is real and it is part of who you are. But there is a very important distinction between the predictability that provides a stable foundation and the predictability that signals the death of genuine engagement. And what you are experiencing right now with this particular thing is firmly in the second category. It is not that things are running smoothly and you feel secure in the smoothness. It is that you know exactly what everything is going to be before it happens, with a completeness that removes any trace of genuine aliveness from your engagement with it. You know what the conversation will contain. You know what the dynamic will feel like. You know how the day will unfold, what the response will be, what the next step will look like. Not in the comfortable way of someone who has mastered something and now moves through it with confidence, but in the flat, slightly weary way of someone who has seen this specific movie enough times that they no longer need to watch it to know how it ends. Your mind needs contact with the unknown. It needs questions it has not yet answered, problems it has not yet solved, territory it has not yet mapped. This is not restlessness or ingratitude. It is the nature of a genuinely intelligent, deeply curious mind. And right now, this thing in your life is no longer offering that contact. The flatness you feel is not the flatness of someone who has lost their enthusiasm for life. It is the very specific flatness of a stimulated mind that has been asked to keep engaging with something that stopped being genuinely stimulating a while ago. That flatness is a message. And the message is that something in you is ready for more than this provides. Sign 3. You find yourself craving conversations and connections that require more of you and offer more in return. Notice where your attention goes when you have freedom to direct it. Notice what kinds of exchanges leave you feeling genuinely energized and alive versus what kinds leave you feeling slightly hollow despite their surface pleasantness. You are craving something more. Something that requires a level of depth, honesty, and intellectual engagement that your current situation is not consistently offering. You find yourself wanting conversations that go somewhere real, that do not stay carefully on the surface, that do not recycle the same familiar exchanges, that are willing to enter the uncomfortable territory where something genuinely new might be said or discovered or understood. You find yourself wanting connection that feels like genuine meeting, the kind where both people are actually present, actually showing themselves, actually changed in some way by the exchange. This craving is significant. It is not nostalgia for something you have lost, and it is not unrealistic idealism about a kind of connection that does not exist. You have had conversations and connections like this. You know their quality. You know how different they feel from what you are currently experiencing most of the time. And the gap between what you have been experiencing and what you are craving has become large enough to be impossible to ignore. The depth you are craving is not just emotional. It is intellectual, honest, genuinely mutual in a way that your current situation does not consistently offer. You want to be met. You want someone or something in your life that requires your full intelligence and your full honesty and your full presence. Not because you want to perform these things, but because you want to actually use them. The fact that you are craving this is not a sign of dissatisfaction with yourself. It is a sign that you have become more capable, more honest, more ready for depth than what you are currently surrounded by. And that more is looking for a place to go. Sign 4. The critical voice in your head has shifted from criticizing yourself to questioning whether the things around you are worthy of your effort. You are familiar with your inner critic. Most Virgos are. The voice that notices the imperfection in everything, including and perhaps especially in yourself. The voice that has driven you toward excellence for your entire life, and has also at times made it very difficult to feel genuinely good about what you have accomplished. You have a complicated relationship with this voice. It has pushed you to grow and improve, and it has also made you harder on yourself than you deserve. But something interesting is happening with that voice right now. It has shifted its direction. It is still precise and still unsparing, but it is no longer pointing primarily at you. It has turned outward, and what it is examining, with the same thoroughness and the same refusal to be satisfied with less than what is true, is whether the things around you are actually worthy of what you bring to them. This is a significant shift, and it is worth taking seriously. When your critical mind has spent years primarily pointing at yourself, and is now consistently redirecting its attention toward the situation, relationship, or environment around you, something important is being communicated. Your inner intelligence has already done the work of understanding what you are capable of, what you are worth, what the quality of your effort and attention actually represents. And it is now applying that understanding to what surrounds you, whether the things around you are deserving of what you give them, whether the standard being maintained here is actually equal to your own. The answer your inner critic is arriving at, quietly but persistently, is not always comfortable. Because the honest answer in this situation is that you have been giving far more than you are receiving. That the standard of the thing around you has not kept pace with your own growth. That you have outgrown the level at which this is operating, and your inner critic, which has always been scrupulously honest, even when it was pointing at you, is now being scrupulously honest about that. Sign 5. You keep finding yourself daydreaming about a version of your life that looks and feels very different. You are not normally a daydreamer in the frivolous sense. Your mind is too analytical, too grounded in practical reality, to spend much time in fantasy for its own sake. When your mind goes somewhere in imagination, It is usually going there for a reason, to plan, to solve a problem, to prepare for something approaching. So when you notice that a particular kind of daydream keeps returning, it is worth paying it the same careful attention you would pay to any other signal your mind offers you. The daydream that keeps coming back to you imagines a version of your life that looks and feels very different from the one you are currently living. Not different in every possible way. You are not fantasizing about an unrecognizable life, but different in the specific way that matters. The thing you have outgrown is not there. The constraint that has been weighing on you quietly is not present. The dynamic that has been draining rather than sustaining you does not exist in this imagined version. And in its absence, something opens. There is a quality of space and possibility in this imagined life that is so palpable, so genuinely felt, even in imagination, that it stays with you after the daydream passes. You find yourself returning to it, refining it slightly each time, the way you refine everything, editing out the parts that feel like pure fantasy and keeping the parts that feel like genuine possibility. This returning and refining is itself significant. Your analytical mind would not keep working on a vision that it genuinely believed was impossible. The fact that it keeps coming back and keeps working on the details means that some part of you believes this version of your life is not just a daydream. It is a direction. It is something that is actually available to you, not through wishful thinking but through the genuine change that is already happening in you and around you. The different version of your life that you keep imagining is not beyond your reach. It is simply ahead of where you currently stand. CTAB. If this message is resonating with your sign right now, trust that it is not a coincidence. When the universe wants to speak to you, it sends exactly the right signal at exactly the right moment. And you are here because you needed to hear this today. Your support, whether as a subscriber or as a member of this community, is what keeps these messages alive. The ones that touch hearts, awaken minds, and transform lives. If this video has been making sense to you, drop in the comments the day you were born. Let us keep going. Sign 6. Your standards have quietly risen and what was once acceptable no longer is. This is one of the most honest and most telling signs of genuine growth, and for Virgo it often goes unrecognized for what it is, because the raising of your own standards can feel, from the inside, like you are simply becoming more difficult, more demanding, more impossible to satisfy. Your inner critic is happy to frame it that way, but that framing is wrong and it deserves to be corrected. Your standards have risen because you have grown. Not because you have become unreasonable or because something is wrong with you, but because the person you have become through the experience and the effort and the growth of recent years has a clearer, more developed understanding of what genuine quality looks, feels, and functions like. And that clearer understanding makes certain things that you once accepted, because you did not yet know to ask for more, or because you did not believe you were entitled to more, no longer acceptable. This is not selfishness. This is the natural consequence of genuine growth. When you become more, you recognize more clearly what genuine quality requires. When you give more, you develop a clearer sense of what reciprocity actually looks like. When you understand yourself more honestly, you begin to have a much clearer sense of what actually serves you and what simply costs you. The things that no longer meet your standard, the interactions, the arrangements, the level of engagement or respect or honesty or depth, they did not get worse. You simply got better. You grew to a place where you're discerning. I can see clearly what was always there. That the match between what you were giving and what you were receiving was never equal. And that accepting that mismatch was something the previous version of you was willing to do and the current version of you is not. This rising of standards is not a problem. It is evidence of exactly the kind of growth that makes the next chapter of your life possible. Sign 7. Your identity is rearranging itself in ways that feel right, even when they are unfamiliar. Identity is something you take seriously, perhaps more than most. You are a person who knows themselves, not perfectly, because self-knowledge is always a work in progress, but with a depth and honesty that comes from years of careful, genuine self-examination. You do not hold a casual or approximate understanding of who you are. You have looked at yourself with the same thoroughness you bring to everything else, and you know your values, your instincts, your patterns, your gifts, your shadows with a precision that few people achieve. And right now, that identity, that carefully constructed, deeply understood, honestly examined self is shifting. Not breaking down, not dissolving, but rearranging. The order of importance is changing. The things you once considered central to who you were are becoming less central, and things that were once on the edges of your sense of self are moving toward the middle. Who you are is being reorganized around a truer center, around the values and desires and forms of meaning that are most genuinely yours, rather than the ones that were shaped by what was expected or needed or simply inherited without full examination. This rearrangement has a quality of rightness to it, even when it is unfamiliar. That distinction is crucial. Familiar and right are not the same thing. The old arrangement of your identity was familiar because it was what you had lived with. The new arrangement is right because it is more honestly who you actually are. When the rearrangement produces something that feels right even as it feels unfamiliar, it is not moving in the wrong direction. It is moving toward a version of you that is more complete, more honest, more fully expressed. Trust the feeling of rightness, even when the unfamiliarity is uncomfortable. The discomfort is not a signal that something is going wrong. It is simply what genuine transformation feels like from the inside while it is happening. Sign 8. You feel drawn to grow in directions that the current structure of your life does not accommodate. Something in you is pulling. A direction that feels genuinely important, a form of growth, a new dimension of yourself you want to develop, a way of being in the world that feels truer and more expansive than the way you have been operating. And when you look honestly at the current structure of your life, the arrangements, the commitments, the routines, the dynamics you operate within, you see clearly that there is not enough space for this direction inside the current structure. Not because the structure is entirely wrong or should be discarded in its entirety, but because it was built around a version of you that was smaller, not less worthy but genuinely smaller, than the version of you that is now reaching towards something more. This mismatch between who you are becoming and what your current structure can contain is one of the most uncomfortable and most important signs of genuine outgrowing, because it puts you in the position of recognizing that moving toward what you are drawn toward requires changing the structure itself, which means letting go of something or multiple things that have been part of how your life is organized. This is not simple, and you know it is not simple. You do not have a naive relationship with change and what it costs, but you also have a deep enough relationship with honesty to know when a structure needs to change in order to contain what is actually growing inside it. The direction pulling you is real. The growth it represents is real. And the current structure's inability to accommodate it is not a reason to abandon the direction. It is information about what needs to change so that the direction can be followed. Sign 9. Something that once brought satisfaction and a sense of purpose now feels insufficient. Satisfaction and purpose are not small things. You do not use these words casually, and you do not feel them casually either. When something brings genuine satisfaction, the deep, settled feeling of effort well spent, of meaning found, of contribution made that actually matters, you know it. And you remember what that felt like with this thing, in the earlier time when the fit was right and the engagement was genuine and what you were giving and what you were receiving from this situation were in an honest balance. You remember the satisfaction, and you notice its absence now. The thing that once gave you a real sense of purpose has not lost its value in an abstract sense. It is not that the thing itself is worthless, but it no longer connects to where your sense of purpose actually lives. Your sense of purpose has moved, grown, deepened, become more specific about what genuinely matters to you, and this thing has not moved with it. The gap between where your purpose lives now and what this thing is able to offer has become too wide to bridge through effort or reframing or renewed commitment. You have tried those approaches. You have brought renewed attention and new angles of effort to this situation, the way Virgo always does when something is not working, trying to find the problem in the approach rather than in the fit. But the problem is not in the approach. The approach has been good. The effort has been real. The fit is simply gone. And recognizing that the insufficient feeling you now carry around this thing is not a reflection of your values changing or your standards becoming unreasonable, but is simply the accurate perception of a misfit that has grown too large to manage, is one of the most honest and most liberating recognitions available to you right now. Sign 10. A knowing has settled in your chest, patient, clear, and permanent, that a wider, truer version of your life is waiting for you to step into it. This is the sign that contains all the others. Not in the mind, not in the analytical, examining, always working intelligence that has generated all the other signs and processed all the evidence they present, but in your chest, in the center of your body, in the quiet place that your mind cannot entirely reach with its arguments and its counter-arguments and its careful management of risk. There is a knowing there. It has settled. It is not anxious, not desperate, not the kind of urgent feeling that comes from wanting to escape something. It is quieter and more solid than that. It is patient, can wait, though it has been waiting for quite some time already, and it knows that its waiting has a limit. It is clear, not ambiguous, not something you need to interpret or analyze to understand its meaning. It speaks in the direct language of deep inner truth, which is not always verbal, but is always comprehensible when you let yourself be still enough to hear it. And it is permanent. This is the most important quality. This knowing has the quality of something that is not going to go away, is not going to be reasoned out of existence by the analytical mind, is not going to be managed or redirected or waited out. It has settled the way things settle when they are finally exactly where they belong. The knowing tells you something simple. There is a wider version of your life available to you. Not a perfect version you know better than to believe in perfection. Not a version without difficulty or challenge or the need for continued growth. But a version that is more honest, more fully yours, more capable of containing the full truth of who you have become through all the growth, all the effort, all the quiet, careful work of becoming more genuinely yourself. That version is not a fantasy. It is not wishful thinking. It is what happens when someone with your depth and your honesty and your courage follows the evidence of their own growth to where it is actually pointing, which is exactly where you are standing right now. CTAC. If this message resonated with your sign, trust that it is not a coincidence. When the universe wants to speak to you, it always sends exactly the right signal, and you are here because you needed to hear this today. Your support as a subscriber or as a member of this community is what keeps these messages alive. They are the messages that touch, awaken, and transform. If this video made sense to you, leave in the comments the day you were born. Here is what the outgrowing means, Virgo. It does not mean that the time you spent was wasted. It does not mean that you were wrong to invest yourself, to commit, to give the years and the effort and the careful attention you gave. It does not mean the thing itself was without value, or that the people involved in it were without worth, or that you were naive or mistaken for staying as long as you did. All of that growth, even the growth that happened inside a structure that no longer fits you, was necessary. It made you who you are standing here today. Someone with more depth, more honesty, more self-knowledge, more capacity for genuine engagement than you had when you first stepped into what you are now stepping beyond. The outgrowing is not a judgment on the past. It is simply what happens when a person grows genuinely, consistently, and honestly over time. The things that fit the person you were become eventually too small for the person you have become. And the choice at that point, the only choice that is actually in alignment with your own growth and your own truth, is to step forward. Not impulsively, not recklessly, not with the cruelty of burning down what was before you have built what comes next, but steadily, honestly, with the care and the thoroughness that your nature always brings to every significant transition. The wider version of your life that is waiting for you has always been there. It has been waiting at exactly the distance your growth needed to cover before you were ready for it. And you are ready for it now. Not because you have finally achieved perfection or resolved every difficulty or silenced every doubt. You are ready because you are genuinely more than you were. Because you have done the work through all of it that makes what comes next possible. What comes next for you is not smaller than what you are leaving. It is larger. It is truer. It is built around the full truth of who you actually are rather than the partial version of you that the previous situation could contain. And it is waiting for you to step into it with the same quiet, thorough, deeply honest courage that you have brought to every significant moment of your remarkable life. Take the step, Virgo. The wider life is real, and it has your name on it.